Hey, the leasehold equation, what you need to know. Hi, Kevin Wright here, back with another property finance video. This week we're talking about leaseholds. Now, if that's interesting to you, hey, keep watching. Now, if you live or you invest in England and Wales and you're going to buy a flat, it's pretty certain, somewhere about 99% certain, it's going to be a leasehold. Now, if you're investing in a leasehold, and this applies to houses to a lesser extent, although there's way less leasehold houses, big question to ask is, how many years are left on the lease? Because, of course, the number of years is going to tick down year by year, isn't it? Now, the reason you should be interested is because mortgage lenders are very interested in how many years is left on the lease. And they like a buffer on top of the mortgage term. Now, if the mortgage term is usually 25 years, it isn't always, but it usually is, buffer that a mortgage lender likes on top of that, well, now this varies lender to lender, and it could be anything up to 55 years, or even 60 years in some cases, but certainly another 30 on top of the mortgage term. So if mortgage lenders are looking out for it, so it makes sense for you as a leasehold owner or prospective leasehold owner to look out for it too. What does this mean? Well, once the lease ticks below 85 years, you start getting some lenders that now don't want to lend. And the further it goes down, below 80, below 70, below 60, you lose more lenders the shorter it gets until pretty much you've got no lenders at all. And the result of that is an unmortgageable short lease flat. Now, if you find flats with less than 80 years on the lease, what should you do? And one thing is avoid them like the plague. And to be honest, that's what pretty much most people do. But is that the right decision? Or is there an opportunity in there somewhere? Now, flats with declining leases, and certainly ones that are below 80 years, are a bit of a rarity in property because it's actually a depreciating asset, whereas property in the main is an appreciating asset. You might be thinking, why do short lease flats decrease in value? And the answer is because it gets exponentially more expensive to increase the lease the shorter number of years is left. Now, you can imagine that decreasing property prices on a property that a mortgage lender has got a mortgage on is enough to give them the heebie-jeebies, and you wouldn't be wrong. Now, the choices to extend the lease are a voluntary process, which means you, the leaseholder, and the freeholder can enter into a discussion, but it's not binding on either side. Or you can go down the statutory route and use the relevant Act of Parliament to bring the freeholder to the negotiating table by issuing a Section 42 notice. And this will add a fixed 90 years onto whatever the existing term of the lease is. Now, if you're looking to buy one of these flats, it could be that the current owner doesn't really understand the problem or the fact that their property is depreciating in value year on year, or maybe they do but are not in a position to do anything about it because, well, they just haven't got the cash, and they're probably in a time of life where they couldn't borrow the cash on a mortgage either.
What do you mean you're not subscribed? Weekly finance videos? Weekly Monday morning Q&As, mentee case studies, what's not to like? Come on, click that button, and that dingy belly thing, and the Instagram one too. That's better. Now back to the video.
Now, if you think this sounds like a lot of hassle, well, it is, and it's too much hassle for the majority of people. But therein lies the opportunity, doesn't it? When you're prepared to do something that most people aren't prepared to do. Now, it could be that the current leasehold owner actually wants to get rid of the property, and they're prepared to sell it at a reasonable price. And they're also prepared to reduce the price by the cost of extending the lease, which is probably going to be tens of thousands, and depending on the value and location of the flat, could be even hundreds of thousands, which could mean the price has to come down quite significantly to make it a viable deal for anyone who wants to buy it. And of course, depending on how short the short lease is, probably couldn't buy it with a mortgage anyway. It'd have to be cash, and if you haven't got cash, well, you know the alternative cash. You've been watching any of my videos, and that is bridging finance. Now, going back to that Section 42 notice, well, you have to have owned the flat for 2 years to be able to have the right to issue a Section 42 notice on the freeholder. Now, one way that savvy investors, and particularly the ones that I teach this strategy to, know to work around this is to get the current leaseholder to issue the Section 42 notice and then make it assignable to you, the new buyer. Bridge is going to be happy to lend if they know you're in the process of extending the lease, because the minute that additional 90 years gets added to the existing lease, the value jumps up, in some cases quite considerably. And with 100 plus years on the lease now, it switches from being unmortgageable to mortgageable. So now sell it and bank the cash on the profit that you've you've made, or refinance it onto an ordinary buy-to-let mortgage or whichever type of mortgage suits the way you want to derive rental income from the property. Now, I have to say this is a complex strategy. Most people would walk away from it. My students at the advanced level of the Ninja Investor program, and hey, look, I'm here about to run one of these 4-day Ninja Investor program events where I'm going to teach people in detail how to do this. Well, these guys and girls, they actually do some of these deals. So I'm going to be back next week with another property finance video. Catch you then.
If you enjoyed watching this video, did you know every Monday morning at 8:30 I do a live Facebook Q&A. So if you want to start the week with checking out some answers to your property finance questions, click the link here.